Okay, yeah, that'd be great. So greetings, good evening, my name is Anastasia Sprout, and this is a presentation called Temporarily Evil, a Childhood SRA Survivor's Quest for Healing Inside and Out. SRA standing for Satanic Ritual Abuse, and I'll talk more about what that has turned out to mean for me. The general definition of SRA often involves the horrific abuse of children that involves some kind of ritual and some kind of occult ritual. Satanism is an ideology, and there are other kinds of ideologies that represent occult malevolent harm to children, like Luciferianism. There's abuse in all organized religions that I've ever heard of. And my qualification is that it is not that everyone involved in Satanism is involved at this level. I'll talk more about that. But mainly today I want to focus on my own experiences. So this was me in 2019. You probably have bright pictures of yourself pre-pandemic. I worked as a professional, as a licensed psychotherapist. I had my first memories of satanic ritual abuse and trauma-based mind control in therapy in my 20s. Although some of them came not in therapy, they came during meditation. And if you're thinking about what if I was a survivor, I might have things that happened to me that I may not remember, meditation is a great way to just invite clarity from your own recollection. So I did have memories that came. They were really weird. I didn't know what to do with them. A therapist I was seeing at the time said, you might want to go see this guy. His name is David Kaloff. He's a global expert on satanic ritual abuse. He happens to be from Seattle. And so I did see a presentation by him. I had some resonance, but I was in my 20s. My life was pretty chaotic in a lot of ways. And eventually I did go to see him as a psychotherapist, although he had already lost his license by then. He was tremendously persecuted by Satanists, but he was still very effective. So I have worked on therapy and healing since in the early 90s. I'm 54 now. I was in 12-step recovery for 23 years, working on self-sabotage behaviors, which turned out to be programming. And I also joined a support and meditation group with 8 other survivors of satanic ritual abuse and trauma-based mind control. And I can tell you that that really escalated my healing when I was around other people who had been through similar things and they had their memories. Because we could talk about things that happened to us and people would say, oh wow, I think I relate to that. I think something like that happened to me. So, even though I knew that I had been through weird things, I had memories of occult type blood involving abuse and candles and things that aren't like your classic incest memories. I still thought of Satanism as the horror from my past long ago, or in the present perhaps they're like troublemaker people, is one way of saying it. The rebels, we're Satanists. We wear, upside down or pentagram, t-shirts, or and so maybe they make a propaganda film like Satan Wants You, which was an actual film that showed at the Seattle Film Festival. And I say propaganda because there was an author of a book called Michelle Remembers, and they created a film to debunk that story. But I actually believe the story has credibility. So I felt like that was a propaganda, a film of lies. And it was sponsored or supported by the Satanic Temple. And they went out and handed out flyers and were kind of doing activism at the Seattle Film Festival. I thought of going to protest that, but I didn't have the energy. But there is the Satanic Temple, Washington, building a satanic community. And so that's an actual website. It exists now. And so I thought Satanism they were people that maybe went to picnics, did whatever, and you click on their website. They're actually quite active. They have after-school clubs that they sponsor. They do some legislative stuff. They hold protests, religious things. So seems like kind of a thriving community, but I didn't remember any abuse from them. My thing that happened when I was little, there were vague memories. I couldn't figure out who was involved. So that's what I thought Satanism was. I wasn't really looking at it in a broader way. I mean, I knew there were conspiracy to harm, but it didn't really clarify how big it was. until we were lied to in what I consider my first exposure to a mass satanic ritual abuse operation. The pandemic alert, COVID-19, I really came to believe that was run behind the scenes by the old satanic families who are expert poisoners. They love to poison people. And if you do some research on the Solvay family, you'll find shell company after shell company after shell company, but that family is allegedly active in satanic rituals, and eventually you get to the PCR test makers. So I was doing some research at this time. At first, I took the PCR test twice. I was tricked. I didn't get it. And then I gradually started waking up and realizing, wow, there are ties to this that go way back and are really suspect. So I've come to believe we are all SRA survivors now. And I really do mean that. Like, we have survived. Victor was talking about an illness or an injury. There's symptoms of an illness. This was a mass operation, I believe. And so it was scary to think of how orchestrated and big that was. However, it was still easier in a way because it was us versus them. So in my 20s, I had memories of victimization that was quite extreme and organized. In my 50s, I'm kind of getting this sense of, wow, this is a big operation. Countries all around the globe coordinated and participated, like who's controlling this? But it was us against them. So I was asking myself what a lot of us did. Maybe you weren't thinking of it necessarily as Satanism behind the scene. You're thinking of it as a conspiracy of greedy people or the pharmaceutical companies or even the Department of Defense, the government, whoever's behind it. But I'm using that word. What do you do when you're attacked by Satanists and their minions? Well, you stand up, right? And you march. Or at least that's what Victoria Palmer did. She made a sign and put it out. She got a banner and she started inviting people to go and stand up. Now again, it was not framed at that time that it was an attack by Satanists. It was framed as it's an attack on our medical freedom and our sovereignty as individuals. But I felt inside like this was bigger, and I was really terrified. I wanted to leave the city. And I've told this story before that I was supported by people to stand out to the bullies, because really this was a lot of bullying. And so I joined the first March for Freedom as a volunteer. Now you're going to see a lot of pictures of my face. I'm doing that on purpose, not because I want to, be larger than life in terms of in front of you, but you're going to see, I don't know if this is a hard part of the presentation, but you're going to see my eyes change over the course of these slides as I start to remember more about my background. So here I am trying to find my courage and volunteer for the March for Freedom. I joined security, and that's how I started meeting so many of you, which completely transformed my life, that community, other people standing up to white-skilled bullies. So what was that like? Well, a lot of you were there. We were born free. My body, my choice. You see we're making signs. That's just in the circular. Sidewalk chalk. Oh, back in the day, how things change. See that face? So we're a happy lot. We're getting out there. We're standing up. And it was really amazing. So let's go here. You pick up the vibe there, right? People are joyful. They're speaking out. They're not going to be shamed into covering their face for something that was bogus. So just picking up on what it was like to suddenly have community. There's music, there's dancing, there's laughter. Yeah, we radicals. We came together, we pulled together, and we stood up. And it was very powerful and transformative for me. So I was asked to speak in May at another rally, and I gave a talk called Take Off the Mask. I wrote freedom articles for Medium, and I was meeting new friends. I stood up for the right to exemptions in my office. Thank you, Larissa, who empowered me to do that. I started as a licensed psychotherapist writing exemption letters for people who came to me that were going to be fired from their jobs or were forced to wear masks. So instead of running away in fear or terror, I got active and I became part of the solution. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you who were involved in that, because it wasn't just COVID I was standing up to, it was the Satanists, because it reminded me of what that was like, and you helped me to stand up and just say, hey, no, this isn't right. I'm not going to cover my face. And I was really happy at that time. So here's some more pictures. We love you, Seattle. You know, we're just standing up to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as like, hey, you know, Inslee, Nazi, just calling them out, just being like, knock it off. It's not okay. And I'm so proud of us and how we did with that. It was amazing. And then on my personal life, I was having some amazing things happen as well. So you see some faces here. So I had fallen in love, and I had bought a house, and we had a happy housewarming party in September of 2021, and many of you were there. It was a very powerful time. And so you were with me in celebrating that. And what I found out is this idea of intimacy. Into me you see, into me I see. So as that relationship got closer and more deep, and we actually moved into the house together, what happened is I started remembering more of my past and more of my programming and more of the memories. And it was absolutely devastating to remember things that were done to me, but also things that I had done to others. So one of the core components of not the rebel Satanism, but the actual Satanism that goes to the level of abusing pets, abusing animals, sacrificing children, sacrificing people, that's what I'm talking about. That level, one of the key components, they take children and force them to perpetrate others. And then they blame them and say, this is all your fault. You're a horrible, evil person. If you don't do what we say, we're going to torture your family. We're going to call the police on you. They terrorize children into becoming inverted. So you can be one of us if you do this. If not, everyone can get hurt or killed. So I had this us and them idea about what it meant. Oh, those Satanists out there having the problems. But I started to remember things like You Will Fall in the Fall. It's a program basically to make someone go down into their horrible memories more in the fall and winter, and it causes them to not be able to function very well. I started writing down everything I remembered, and I started sending it out to people across the country and the world, because I realized I cannot hold this secret inside. And I also felt like I was starting to remember things that I was told and tortured that I could never tell. So I thought, well, I'll fight back. I will write it down. I will send it out to people. And so I did that. And in this picture, I started taking pictures because I was developing an eye infection. So you can kind of see the red around my eyes as I was remembering things. Well, folks, things started to escalate as more and more memories came back. I had too many memories and not enough therapeutic support. Therapy can be expensive, and I was very overwhelmed. The depth of evil that I was recalling was absolutely overwhelming. So on one hand, we've seen the depth of evil in a way when we looked at the mass poisonings, potentially, of people dying from this poison wax, or the mass masking that takes away people's confidence, hides their face. But as I was remembering, and I'm not going to go in, I am going to name certain things, but I'm not going to go into lots of gory details. So I'm trying to find a balance there. But suddenly them became me. And this is a really key point, and why I wanted to do this talk tonight is that I have had to come to terms with things I was forced to do when I was involved in Satanism that are just so horrible and took me to the depths of self-hate, parts of myself that were raised to hate everyone so I could kill them. And I'm talking about as a small child here, but the feelings coming back as if it were today, and the depth of shame for what I did. Because when you're forced to do something awful or evil, you feel it in your body. Because humans are good. We are not meant to do evil things to each other. And if we do, we pay in our bodies. And so getting back into my body and getting more present was bringing up that emotion. It was been so horrible, but I've had to work really hard on finding self-forgiveness. And part of how I've been doing that is trying to become part of the solution, so that I don't just stay stuck, quiet, and frozen. So, but really looking at, wow, this old idea of it was just them suddenly became me. And I had to realize I can understand how people become so horrible. And I think that is one thing that's very hard when you're looking at them and they're doing all these horrible things to people or children, is like, you think, I would never do that. That is so awful. They're just evil. And so for me, I had to face the fact that, nope, if the conditions were, it's either that or die, and I chose to survive. And that was a ruthless, ruthless choice in that ruthless, ruthless environment. And so I do believe, and I truly believe this, that in order to carry forth what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, I had to survive, and that meant going through things. However, it was devastating to not really be able to point the finger at someone else as less than me, because of the conditions of enslavement. So here's a trigger warning. Just going to mention some atrocities. So I took pictures of myself as these memories came back. This was Halloween 2021, which evoked a memory that I called the fires of hell in the Las Vegas deep underground military bases, underground tunnels when I was 17 years old. And the one thing I'll say about that memory is it involved an amphitheater of 100,000 people underground. So there are very large structures that are down there in my recollection. A huge part of Satanism is sexual inversion or desensitization to loving, healthy sexuality. In other words, combining torture with sexual arousal. And so remembering that inversion. This started from birth. So and you go, well, how could that start at birth? Well, it's horrific, of course. So that's something that we see, though, in modern pornography, which is very much about arousal connected to strangulation, arousal connected to degradation and abuse. So that's what they do in Satanism. And it's really bled into what's flooding the airwaves in modern pornography that everyone is exposed to. So that's another mass, in my mind, mass satanic operation, is the violent and degrading content of mainstream pornography. This was something I called starseed elimination. Age 6, I've talked about this before, when I was forced to kill a child, a girl who was age 5. And again, as you can see, and I'm just, the absolute devastation of remembering that, like what that felt like as a 6-year-old little girl who was trying to get out of the tunnels. And I was told, if you do this, you can go home. Because I was trapped down there. And I was very loyal to my family. And so I wanted out. So it was just so painful. At age 14, I was part of a pornography ring. I was a forced slave in a pornography ring. I was tricked into thinking I was a star sometimes, or I was performing, but I was recalling that I was used to lure other children into a white van. And white vans are often used as part of kidnapping. They often have torture implements in them, certainly restraints. A lot of, again, modern pornography involves BDSM. BDSM is cool. That's a satanic operation. And again, I'm not saying everyone who practices BDSM is a Satanist. I'm just saying the inversion of your heart-based sexuality is very mainstreamed. But I was remembering, just the luring of children. By the way, I did try to find anyone that I could. I did try, I worked with my therapist to try to figure out, do I call the police? What do I do? And we just could never come up with enough clarity on the memories to to go forward with an actual police report. But we considered it, and I absolutely would have done it if I thought it would have made a difference. The other tricky thing is that the police were involved in rituals. So it's hard to know when they would be corrupt and when they would be fair. I was also around age 14 recalling that I was forced to be a cult programmer. And what that means is restraining and torturing for the purpose of whatever the cult wanted to get the victim to do. That might involve actually installing sexually inverted, reactions in someone. So again, very horrific. This was the last one, kind of starting to realize that I was sold to Jack Parsons and the NASA, which is a front, at age 16. I started having memories of ET, alien, off-planet experiences. The program that I quote unquote graduated into was the whole goal of it was to create a female antichrist. They wanted to get psychic kids who could be forced to channel or be possessed by the female Satan, basically, Idol Natas, or the Lady Satan. Jack Parsons was obsessed with that. And he did not die in a fiery crash, as he was reported to do. He was alive and well and operating on slaves, trying to make them into female evil, basically. So that just kind of seeing that it's like almost radiated my eyes, and I saw a healer at that time. She was kind of a very advanced healer, alternative healer, and I every single thing I tried on my eyes did not make it get better. I tried creams, I tried salves, I tried everything, and I'm like, this is just getting worse and worse. And she said, your eyes are showing you what you can't bear to see. They're showing you that you can't bear to see what you're seeing. And so I was like, oh God. So part of it is, in the relationship that I was in, because it was catalyzing so many memories, it was really overwhelming. And I think it's safe to say overwhelming for both of us, but I don't want to speak for my ex. So here's my replace lamp.
Yeah, it just comes on.
Okay.
Lamp's been replaced, it'll go away.
Okay. When you read the ingredients on processed food and accidentally summon Satan, it's like, I didn't mean to have all these memories come back so quickly. I'd been in therapy for decades, but it was really in the relationship, and it was during COVID, we were isolated, and it was Halloween. Just all these triggers just kept coming up and coming up. And so I kind of realized, wow, this is just too much. I can't handle it. And so then I started to recall involvement in the CIA when I was 22. And in January of 2022, I moved out of the house. I was like, I've got to get out of here. I need to clear my head. I need to get more support. I just couldn't bear any more memories coming back. And one of the things I remember about being in the CIA is that they would punch me in the face. And I'm sorry, it's so graphic, but it's just one of the ways they did it. If you didn't instantly comply, it would just be this punch in the face. And so I would get these repeated cold sores. And it was like my body just showed me. It was trying to show me as I was remembering, this is what would happen to you, be punched in the face. And so by that time I was just so sad and so exhausted. But what I was remembering, which I won't go into, is being forced to be an agent, actually. And so what I came to learn was called the autonomous slave. And so there's a very high goal in these networks to create the autonomous slave, who is basically still a puppet, but on invisible strings. So someone's out there and they're cooperating with the cult. They don't know it necessarily. So in my 20s, I thought I was, just a girl in college. I didn't have recollections because it was dissociated from my conscious awareness when strings were pulled behind my head, so to speak. But I wasn't chained to a bed and forced to do something. I was actually acting out on orders while appearing to have a normal life, like the Manchurian Candidate type person. And that's what they are going for. That's the best. So gradually, I did find more support. The memories stopped flooding me after I had moved out. Some of you were there and helped me with my moves. And I started getting to know myself at age 14, this part of me that had been kind of telling me what happened and integrating that, because I was working with a specialist who worked with this kind of extreme organized abuse. And then I started to dye my hair because I was 14. Like, in a lot of ways, I was trying to integrate, like, if you had a 14-year-old, she's like, Mom, I want to dye my hair. I'm like, okay, let's use temporary, please. And so, but you can see that the rash is really starting to go away. So gradually it went away more and more, and in part that was because I did tell the memories to people, and they said, you never would have done that if you were not enslaved. Like, you cannot take on all the shame of that as if you're a horrible person. And yeah, let's, continue to be part of helping others. So I was working as a licensed psychotherapist, but I started to think, I think I need to get into actually helping people who've gone through this organized extreme abuse, because there's a lot of people who could do the therapy piece, but my experience was like leading me to feel like, okay, I could use what I had learned to try to help others. By summer solstice 2022, we were hanging out, we were having some fun, like I was not so overwhelmed all the time. And again, thanks to friends who were standing up with me and just kind of being a person and just dancing in the sun and having, just having more of a normal life. As part of my healing, I created this event called the March for Innocence. And it's a march to stand up for the innocence of all children, but also people everywhere, because we were all children once. I think we all have our inner child inside of us. And so we had our first one, and it was really beautiful. It was really successful in my mind, thanks especially to Victoria and the Seattle Truth Network for sponsoring that, and everyone who helped set up. Our pictures are cut off there, but we were there. I went on to hold a vigil in Las Vegas. So and I went down with my friend who's a fellow survivor, and we made signs. This was directly as a result of what I learned from Victoria and Tim and Larissa and all of you here. That was the place where that memory of the amphitheater, the fires of hell, that's where that is underground in Las Vegas. And so to go there and to have a march on that top soil and to be waving at cars going by. And Elvis, he was quite sympathetic. He knew about the tunnels, the man who was playing Elvis, of course. So we talked to people walking by, and all of a sudden, again, I was making a difference down there. Again, because of your support, I was able to go on and give 2 talks where I spoke in more detail about both satanic ritual abuse and trauma-based mind control. Many of you were there. Again, using my voice to try to be part of the solution instead of the problem. I created this organization, Support for Organized Abuse and Addiction Recovery, SOAR, as a way of trying to invite people to come in and get help. And let me tell you, the first people who have contacted me from around the world are all broke. They need money. They're on the street. They're desperate. They seem psychotic. Not everyone is in that same shape, but those are the people that are reaching out. So it was. If people don't have suppressed memories, then they feel crazy because it's so horrible. It's like the human psyche can barely tolerate it. So you see a lot of dysfunction. But I also got, over time I started to get more referrals of people who were a little, I wouldn't say, they just had more functionality, and then they would start working on things, and then they would start remembering more, just like I did. So this is me. We're coming to the end. I have created this mobile SRA investigations and reporting kind of mission where I'm going to go around to some different cities on location for Seattle Truth Network and SOAR Global News. So creating a news branch so I can start to create just some stories and interviews about things that are happening related to SRA. So there's a case going on right now in Utah, and they're trying to suppress it. And there's this one guy down there trying to get the word out, like, hey, this is a valid case. I want to go down and interview him and just see. So I'll be sharing this stuff on Telegram. I'll be doing interviews. So please share it. Just help get the word out, because, obviously mainstream news is not gonna do this. We're gonna have to do it ourselves. I did start a caravan at substack.com, which is a subscription or a free travel blog. So if you want to follow my adventures on there, feel free to. I'm also writing a memoir on this topic because I do want to write out the stories that I remember, because I found that they actually can help other people remember some of the things that happened to them. And so I'll be working on that on the road. And thank you, my dear friends. I told Ethan he was in this, and there he is. This is us sitting on that, or standing by that very couch. Again, if it weren't for your support, like I would have left the state for sure. I probably wouldn't have any of these memories. They wouldn't have come back, and I wouldn't be going out there to try to help other people. So thank you very much. And last but not least, please join us. I am leaving town for 4 months, but I will be back in October because I want to promote this event. We had a pretty good turnout the first year. I think we had about 25 people there. Last year we had 2. And I have to say it was pretty heartbreaking, but it's like Victor said, when the symptoms aren't as strong, because we had a lot of successes, people were getting back to normal life and feeling busy, then it's not the same motivation to get out there on the streets and march. But I can tell you that there's a lot of places in this area where there is active Satanism like the kind that I went through. And I'm not the right person to lead the charge to go expose those places, because I still have so many things I don't remember, and I feel very vulnerable about that. I still feel like people in my family can be harmed if I go forward around certain things. But it's out there, and it's not as far away as you think. So I have some flyers that I'm going to pass out for the March for Innocence, and I'll ask you to take one. If you can hand them out in other circles, please take, there's 100 here, so please take some. And we'll do some question and answer not recorded, and then I can talk a little bit about how all this connects to politics if you'd like. So we'll stop there. Thank you so much for your attention.